This is my family, and this is my farm. We used to make luxury yogurt, produced locally, and created on the strength of extensive market research. It's pretty expensive as well. We failed to get this right, and we closed the business. We've been converting our farm to organic milk production for the past 5 years. We tried to get a good contract to sell organic milk for a sustainable milk price, and we failed at this one also. So I was confused, because our researcher told us this was what the consumer wanted. Was the credit crunch really so bad that people were putting price above all else? Did people really care how I looked after my animals or cared for the countryside? How could I get a better milk price for the way I farm? Or should I change the way I farm? Could I sell free-range milk like the free-range egg guys do? I'm nearly there. These were the questions I was asking 2 years ago. I'm a farmer board member at Dairy Co, as has just been said, the levy organisation for milk in Great Britain. There is always an enormous debate about the benefits of generic milk advertising, and recently Dairy Co have conducted research into what consumers think about farmers, and we've rolled out a programme of work to support the image of dairy farming. I knew that in other countries they had much larger herd sizes and different farming systems. I wanted to see how their consumers had reacted, whether consumer attitudes were different and better managed elsewhere. So thanks to the Treherne Trust and the Dartington Cattle Breeding Trust for supporting my application to do just this. If you're a consumer in China at this point in time, you want milk that is not poisonous. In 2006, milk products were deliberately contaminated with melamine to boost milk solids and milk price. This caused illness to 300,000 children and deaths of an undisclosed number. And when your government has a policy for one child per family, this is a big loss. Not surprisingly, consumers in China do not trust their home-produced milk. If you live in New Zealand, and more particularly the South Island, you want your farmers to be more concerned about their developments. Tourism is now the second biggest industry after farming in New Zealand, and dairy farm developments in parts of the South Island are in direct conflict with it. We've heard about the hunting and fishing groups today, who in the UK we would count as allies in the countryside movement. They have a campaign called Dirty Dairy against dairy farm development. This has set neighbour against neighbour, with damaging results for the image of dairy farming, based on the premise that farmers are polluting waterways and competing for water resources against the population that is becoming less connected to farming. This has been hugely damaging, and farmers are now on the back foot to gain public support. If you're in the lucky middle class in urban India, you will be getting richer and looking to eat a westernised diet. This would include increased dairy products. If you're in the poorer rural areas, you would probably own and possibly even worship a cow like this. However, milk from these cows is currently collected in churns. Some of you might remember this in the UK, I just about do. And one dairy factory we visited reported collecting 25 kilograms of flies in their milk filters per day. If you're a consumer in rural India, you would be looking to buy your milk in the knowledge that it is clean and fresh, which is a new concept in a country without a cold supply chain and a history of fermented milk products that travel better in warm climates. New, larger dairy farms with up to thousands of cows are seen as the way forward for this and actively encouraged by government grants. If you happen to be lucky enough to live in the California sunshine, where dairy has moved from the damper coastal pastures to intensive units in irrigated but boiling hot Tulare County in the past 20 years, you probably don't know or care where your milk comes from. If anything, you might be proud that you have some of the biggest dairy farms in the world. You might even enjoy their happy cows adverts, showing cows in fields of lush grass, without any thought to the confined dairy herds just round the corner. The very large farms are generally well run, financially and technically, and they've certainly changed my mind on how large dairies are run. But the recent milk price fluctuations have put some under increased financial pressures, and regulation imposed by federal and local government is much higher than in the UK, and this can cost thousands of dollars to the businesses. But it is this trust in government legislation that gives the consumers confidence. The Environment Protection Agency and the Food Standards Agency in America are trusted by consumers to deliver their best interests. Interestingly, smaller farmers are subject to the same regulation and financial pressures, and they are now almost non-existent in California. Back home in the UK, we have a more sophisticated consumer. Some even want to know where their produce is coming from. But when they are buying their milk, they are actually only take a few seconds to choose and are really only looking at the colour of the bottle top and maybe the price. However, this thought process is backed up by a bubble of trust, based on the images like these, that their milk is produced in a very romantic way, and that it is safe. Interestingly, they even think it comes from the fields very near the shop they are in. They think cows eat grass, and that we look after our cows, sheltering them in barns in the winter. Most of the milk in the UK is still produced in a relatively traditional way, not too far removed from the images you saw in those adverts, and in the minds of the consumers. The consumer's bubble of trust can be burst quickly by a food scare, or slowly by lots of things. The biggest threat to the bubble of trust in the UK is product contamination, which might be physical like melamine scandal in China, but is doubtful because farm assurance does take care of that to some degree. But in the UK, it is more likely to be from a disease issue, either real or perceived. Just look back at what happened to beef after BSE, or even what happened to cucumbers this summer over E. coli. Then look at the rise in the incidence of, say, yonies in dairy herds across the UK, and think how this would be reported in the Daily Mail. The bubble of trust can be let down slowly by any number of things, from arrogant farmers to the treatment of cows. If the New Zealand dairy industry was not exporting most of its milk, I think they would find it hard to increase sales in Canterbury at the moment based on their environmental record around them. The UK dairy industry is on the cusp of change, with traditional farms retiring with no succession plan, and the remaining farms are increasingly expanding and choosing grass-based or intensive house systems as the option for growth. Both of these systems work and can be very profitable if run well. Animal welfare groups are raising their game and quite rightly challenging our industry to prove that we are what we say we are through facts about a number of issues. We could do what the Chinese do, and we could advertise the dairy industry using a large pinch of salt, and I challenge anyone to find a herd like this in China. Or do we hope for the best, and hope that no one will really ask about anything, what we do, and still believe in that romantic ideal? The debate about farmers paying to advertise milk is starting again. And to me, whether or not Pixilon buys our product, and it's actually in 90% of fridges across the UK, surveys suggest that at this moment in time, dairy farmers are trusted by the public to produce milk and look after our cows. At the moment, our market is the UK market. The export market is a huge opportunity, and we saw this in China and India, but I think this is for future Nuffields to look at. The UK consumers appear to be closer to the market than in most other countries. In order to maintain their trust into the future, we should consider some of the following. Food labelling. Should we label and sell milk by production method like eggs? Environmental permitting. Nocton Dairies was refused permission on environmental grounds. The same is happening in New Zealand. Environmental agency permitting will come in the UK, I am convinced. We should embrace it and engage it and influence its implementation, or take what we are given. We need a way to measure welfare. We need to prove to animal welfare groups that we can and do measure how happy our cows are. And we need continued consumer research. We need to continue to track what our end user is thinking. and we need to use farm assurance to sell our story. At the moment, the milk price funds farm assurance in a strange way that I'm not quite sure I notice, and it also funds image management through Dairy Co. Closer working between Dairy Co and assured dairy farms would give a better value to the farmers and a much more joined up story. After travelling the world through my Nuffield Scholarship, I know that UK dairy farmers are good at what we do. I have changed my farming system and have these lovely Jersey cows now. I also have 5 pence per litre more in my milk price by removing my milk from the commodity market and into a niche market. This would never have happened unless I met somebody on a Nuffield Scholarship. In the UK, we are ahead of the game on environment. We are investing farmers' money into research to answer many of the questions being thrown at us. The best way for farmers to advertise their milk is to tell everyone how good we are and to use it as a springboard for greater things outside the UK. I am proud of British dairy, and at the moment, so are the British public. Thank you.